Hello and welcome to Too Tall War Games. This is Captain Too Tall, and today with me I have Jim. How you doing, Jim?
I'm doing great today. How are you doing?
Not too bad. This is our first podcast. How you feeling?
Feeling pretty good. Just gonna have to edit this part out where I drone on and on. And
oh no, this is staying. This is gold right here. All right, so guys, this is our first podcast. We're gonna try to talk a little bit about tournament prep today. Talk about a tournament that Jim is going to next weekend, right?
Yeah.
And maybe the Iron Elephant in the Room, Iron Hands, and a few other Marine chapters that might sneak up on us.
Yeah.
So
sneaky.
So I think first we're going to talk about some general tournament prep things.
Okay.
We're both kind of newer, but I think we kind of go some different ways when we're like prepping for a tournament. What do you generally do going into a tournament?
Right. So the first thing I do is I take a look at what's interesting for me to play. I take a look at the types of models and their rules and what kind of armies there are, and I go, well, how fun would this be for me to play? And then after I determine the level of fun it's going to be for me to play, I actually take a look at what's really out there in the meta that can accommodate that fun. And right now for me, it's actually Raven Guard, which is surprising for a lot of people who know me because this is my very first Imperium army. And other than that, I'm usually super salty about the Imperium, simply because you guys usually kick my butt. Moving into what I do for tournament prep, or back to it. So I figure out what's fun for me, and then I figure out what's good in the meta, and then I like to try and draw a balance between it. And then I start making lists, and then after I start making those lists, I send them to everyone who I think matters in opinion-wise. So I'll send it to the first person who taught me 40K, which is my brother, because he's a really good player in the Fort Wayne area, and he teaches me a lot, and he tells me when I make dumb decisions. He never takes his foot off the gas either. Luke, just saying. He gives me a lot of help and input on lists sometimes, and so do you. And shout out to the boys in the Buchanan area, Joe and Aaron and all those who give me advice in tournament prep. So I start running lists by everyone close to me, and they give me advice and tell me what they think. And then after I kind of settle on an idea, I'll start playtesting that idea. And this is months in advance for events.
Oh yeah, of course.
So I mean, when I mean playtesting, like they'll usually have like tournament packets and missions, primers, they like to call them. That's right, mission primers. So for instance, right now the Michigan GT, they've had primers out for Yonkers, So I'll download that event's primer packet, and we'll just start playing games. Probably not as many repetitions as the higher level players get in, but that's okay. So what happens usually is I learn from my failures the most, and when the list is in its infancy and I'm playing against these people, I usually get gapped in points pretty well, and they kick my butt, and then I'm like, okay, well, how can I do better, and is there anything in the list that needs to change? And my opponents give me these inputs, and then I kind of adapt, and we go from there, and we just keep rolling until I'm comfortable enough with that list to just go to the event and play as well as I think I can. Sometimes there's not as much prep that I can do, and sometimes there is. It just depends on how long I have in order to plan.
Right. Yeah, I think you covered a lot of what I was actually going to say, actually. I think for everyone who gets into this hobby, finding a particular unit or two that you really enjoy playing, especially like if you're looking at an army and like for instance, I'm I'm gonna go with Iron Hands here.
Oh yay!
Yeah. I mean, first thing when they started coming out, I was like, I really like Repulsor Executioners, and that's because I'm a guard player. As a guard player, I really love tank commanders.
Of course.
So, I mean, you know, it is a good unit, but sometimes, you know, you're struggling to find good units in your army because I also play Grey Knights, and it's not the best army, but you know, I've run some lists in the past where, you know, I'll focus like my whole army around having some Grandmaster Dread Knights, and do pretty well with that. So I think you have to, in this hobby, you have to have fun with what you're doing. You can't just be competitive because, you know, you and I both kind of have some competitive Magic the Gathering history, and it's so much easier to be detached from that. But when you spend up to, you know, like a month or two collecting and building and painting these models, like you have to have fun with it at some point. But yeah, I think definitely like you have to get rounds of play in is a big thing, because, you know, if you just build a list that you think is going to do really well, even if the list itself would do really well, or you know, net list, you could get beat by somebody who just knows their army. You know, I would say probably in an ideal world, you should play the exact same list, I would say between 5 and 10 times before you start making changes to the list. I know, you know, 10 games is a lot for a lot of us. Like, we get in like 1 or 2 games a weekend.
Yeah.
But if, you know, you have the opportunity to play, you know, 5 games over 2 weeks, I'd probably try to just play with that same list. And then afterwards, just figure out, okay, well, these units are like the superstar units, and then these units I could do something else with. And I think that goes a lot into what I do when I am building lists for tournaments. I might go over what I'm planning on doing in the future with my Iron Hands. But yeah, I think that you just really there's always going to be a meta, and we aren't always going to have the money to just get the exact thing to counter the meta. So you have to be comfortable with your army for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's it depends on the hobbyist too. Like for me, you raised a good point about like net listing, and net listing is always such a hot topic for people. You either do it or you don't. You're the devil or you're the angel, and it's just silly to me. Like, I really enjoyed playing the Jim Vessel style chaos list. But it took such a long time to adapt to because I'm not as smart as Jim Vessel. That guy is really good. Like, I played him last year at the Michigan GT, and this is, you know, he's really good.
Right.
Like, he's number one for a reason. But I did what I normally do. You know, I took that list and I kind of put my own spins on it, and I took advice from other people, and then I got really good with it. But after I got good enough with it, I just got bored with it. So I decided to move on. And I did that, you know, with Tyranids and Chaos Knights. That's what I do. And like you said, it's like, if you're a meta chaser, chase the meta. If that's what you like to do, like, I don't have too much attachment to my models. Like, I'll paint them, I'll make them tournament ready, and then when I'm bored with them, I'll probably sell them and use that money that I sell them with to start a new army.
Yeah, my problem is I'm impulsive. I've only been playing the game for 2 years, but I think I've gone through like 7 army changes. And part of that though is I needed to find like a play style that like fit me. Like, my first army was Blood Angels, and I mean, I'm not the assault kind of guy.
Yeah.
Like, I like psychic powers, and I like shooting. I haven't really found the greatest way yet to combine those 2 phases, but those are the 2 phases that I like the most. And so like for me, I've been kind of back and forth on Eldar, Drukhari, uh, Guard, Admech, and now Iron Hands. And a couple of those armies I have managed to keep together. But when I was starting out, I was like, Blood Angels, nope, get rid of it. Thousand Suns, no, get rid of it.
Yeah.
And like that does cost a lot of money. And if I had, kept some models, like I had a Raven Guard army almost 2 years ago now. I might still be playing them, but that just I'm very impulsive when it comes to that, and I don't want to say I'm a meta chaser, but I do look at things. I'm like, oh, that's really strong, and I want to play something that's really strong. So I guess you could almost say that I am, but I do get stubborn, and I will go to a tournament and play with some Grey Knights, and it's but like sometimes just playing against really good people, if you have like really good players in your area. Like I played against Justin Curtis at like the Indy Open, and like he kind of brought me back down to earth because even after his game, like I demolished like my next couple opponents, but that one game, I don't think I've sweat so much in my life. Like he had me on my toes the whole time, and he ended up pulling it out. But it was just barely, and I ended up, I think, 5th of that tournament, and he was 3rd because he did lose his last round. But it was a really good game. But I knew that I was not like on his level.
Yeah.
And so like sometimes you just need to play people who are just a lot better than you.
Yeah, but that's how you grow, It's you're not gonna grow in anything if you're not constantly challenging yourself. You're not gonna constantly challenging yourself if you're playing the same people you just continue to beat. So it's really nice when you're someone like me who's starting out, is really weak in like the rules areas, or not as finessey or skilled in certain aspects of the game. It's really neat to see or gauge yourself and your growth in the game as you play these more experienced people who give you input and show you all these tricks. Like I played Aaron Along at the Aquila Open in the South Bend area for a second game, and that was a learning experience for me. He's a really, really good player, and he showed me a lot of things that were really cool that I could do in the future. And that's just something that's really interesting. What I find interesting is watching yourself grow in the hobby as you play.
Well, and you want to play against people who not only are better than you, but you want to play against somebody who will help you get better. Because I've certainly had games. I've both been on the receiving end and the giving end of this, where I just either get demolished or I demolish somebody, and you don't. When you're on the receiving end of that, and they're not like explaining things that you could do better or trying to help you out, like even sometimes in the game to get like little extra points here and there. You don't really learn anything. What basically you just kind of get defeated. So I think it's always better if you have somebody who's like a lot better than you, but if they are also like nice and they'll like go over your mistakes with you and like help you analyze things. I think one of the things that I like to do with people is we will do like a really slow game where we like go through the movement phase, what exactly is behind each movement, because the movement phase really is like the most important phase.
Agreed.
And so if you just break down 2 or 3 phases at the very start of the game, and that might take like up to an hour, but if you break that down so that everyone knows what they're doing, and even sometimes what their opponent is doing, then I think that really adds a lot to like what you know about the game.
Yeah. All right. So what are we gonna talk about next?
Well,
are we still on the tournament prep topic?
I think we hit that one pretty good. I think we can go on to The Michigan GT. I know
Okay.
you are excited to talk about the Michigan GT. You are not bringing chaos, which I think
No.
is dumb.
Yeah.
But I want to know where
Dare.
you're coming from with your list and what you expect to see.
Okay, so yeah, like you said, first and foremost, I am typically, at least for the past year or so, been a Chaos player, whether it's Renegade Knights or Chaos Demons, Thousand Suns, Khorne or Tzeentch, whatever. So the shift is definitely interesting for me. I like Raven Guard. I like how sneaky they are. I took a look at their codex, and I took a look at what they can do with infantry units and board control and deployment. And I said, this seems fun, and this could probably throw a couple people off or on tilt at the start of the game, kind of get them thinking. There's a lot of mind games with Raven Guard, and you can see a little bit of that spill over into Ultramarines. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone else knows this. They probably do. But with Ultramarines, you can just take 3 Ultramarine units and redeploy them. So you can take 3 Repulsors and redeploy them.
Yeah, you basically become Eldar at that point with their Phantasm or whatever it's called.
Silly, but that kind of thing really throws off the game plan of your opponent sometimes, unless they're privy to that information and they plan for it. So I like that kind of flexibility when it comes to the army. So I've built a list for the Michigan GT, kind of it's to plan a little bit more for the secondaries portion of the mission packet.
Well, because it's not pure ITC. It's not like what we're used to. You got like some Maelstrom missions in there and some like different things going on.
Right. So the Michigan GT and I think Bill's the guy who runs it. So the Michigan GT, it's 128 people. And first off, like I was there last year and it was a fantastic job. The tables had beautiful terrain and they have all sorts of other games. Like they had X-Wing and they had the Star Wars Legion, and you should.
Oh yeah, last year was. Yeah, it was good.
Baller. It was a fantastic event. They have all sorts of special rules. Like if your Warlord was killed in the first turn, then you yell out this, and if you're the first person to yell that out, then you get a prize. Sort of cool stuff like that. So the mission packet, it's a mix of ITC and their own secondaries that they make, as well as an end-game objective, and then it's also player-placed terrain. So there's a lot that goes into this. But I also want to say real quick that the Michigan GT has probably outdone themselves this year. They have provided a chess clock for every table for the Champions event. So 128 players. So that's what, 64?
60, yeah, that 64 chess clocks, and they're like what, $10-15 at least for a chess clock.
These are good chess clocks. You'll see a lot of your local players bring these little red and gray chess clocks in, and I think you have one of those. They're really popular, but the hats off to them for doing something like that. That's fantastic. So the setup is probably the most important because it's player-placed terrain, and you'll probably have around 8 to 9 pieces of terrain. And they have to be placed they have to be placed at least 4 inches or greater away from each other and the table edge. And it's alternating, too.
Right.
And then you have your deployment. There's no you deploy your whole army deal either. They didn't adopt that.
Oh, come on. That's always fun.
Let's not get into that.
I mean, you're Raven Guard. Yeah, I don't think you really care if you deploy first because you're going to be all sneaky.
Yeah. So there are some secondaries that I was really lacking in. But with this list that I have currently, I think potentially have a better hold on it. Like there are 6 secondaries, and it's also alternating. So you roll off, and the winner of that roll picks the first secondary, and then you can only pick 3, and none of the secondaries can be picked twice. So there's opening dominance is kill more of your opponent's units than he does of yours in the first battle round. So you're obviously going to be able to kill more of my stuff than I am of yours in the first battle round.
Right.
So I want to deny you that 3. So I want to deny you those 3 points.
Right.
So, and all of the secondaries are based on that kind of concept where it's you or your opponent. Your opponent does this or you do this before yada yada. So that's something I kept in mind when I was building the list. Another thing I kept in mind is the fact that there are so many lists out there that are character dependent. And Raven Guard, when they move into the tactical doctrine, are really good at killing characters. So I decided what's fun for me is being able to reach out there and touch you and smash your face in.
Well, of course.
So some people like to go with scout snipers or eliminators, or they'll do targetable smites with like chaos characters and stuff like that. And I've done the latter of that with my chaos lists. But now I've decided to actually go with both eliminators and scouts in my list. So I've got 15 scout snipers and I've got 9 eliminators. And the really cool thing about the eliminators is if they're using their mortis round, which is not the one that ignores line of sight. If they use the mortis round, then they're doing their mortals if they can see you directly. You're in the tactical doctrine, so you're doing +1 to hit and wound. And then you can do guided aim, which means you're doing another +1 to hit and wound.
Right.
If the character is the nearest target to that unit, you can get another +1 to wound with Catechism of Fire. So you can do mortals on 3s to characters with a sniper squad.
Which is pretty big, yeah.
Which is really big. And I mean, even with scout squads, you're still doing mortals on 5s.
Yeah.
Which is just, it's fantastic. So you're just wiping these guys out. It's got to be a lot difficult for smart Iron Hand players who know how to hide their characters, especially behind or inside of repulsors. Especially with Ironstone. Reese was talking about that on Frontline Gaming not too long ago. I was listening to. Obviously, you can't put the Ironstone on Pharaohs because he's a special character.
Right.
So you got to put him on something, and he says, like, if you put it on like a lieutenant, you're dumb. You need to put it on something very durable, or you need to be able to really hide it. So he was suggesting, something like a bike captain. But that's just so going back to my list. Killing characters is a big deal. Being able to stand inside of or on top of terrain is a big deal. Being able to deny a lot of area is a big deal. I have 24 units, actually 26 with the Phobos Captain and the Phobos Librarian that can deploy in no man's land. I want to deny as much area as possible for any of your army to do things. But I also don't want to be shot, and that's why I like Eliminators, because they can just sit behind stuff and shoot you and annoy you until I force you to come my way. So then there's the idea of you having to come towards me, which I don't like. So I need to have a counterpunch. So in order to have that proper counterpunch, I have first a unit of 5 Vanguard veterans with jump packs, and my brother gave me this idea of dual plasma pistols.
Oh yeah, you were telling me about that.
And like, if I want, I could just scout move them forward 9 inches before the game, and then move them 12 inches, pop something, and they die. But either they're more than likely going to die if they come in turn 2 or 3. They're just designed to go in, effectively kill a unit, and then just get smoked.
Yeah, because you still got 10 plasma shots.
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
And then you get +1 to hit if it's a character, which means that you can overload safely.
Exactly. This is really nice. So you have that kind of thing, and then I have 2 units of Assault Centurions, which nobody wants to see across the table. So I have a lot of flexibility with that as well. I'm going 2 units of Assault Centurions with obviously they have the Hand Flamers, but I'm going Hurricane Bolters. I don't think anyone wants to really take that mortal wound charging stuff because it's not very useful. At least I don't think it is. The Hurricane Bolters is really nice. So 1 unit of 6 and 1 unit of 5, just because I could only fit in that to my list. I like the unit of 6's flexibility with combat squads. If I really need to, I can split them up into 2 units of 3, because even in 2 units of 3, they still have enough firepower and smashy to kill whatever they want if they're in range of anything. But it gives me the ability to kind of hit you on more flanks if I need to. So I have all of these scouts and snipers just flooding the board. Hopefully they're high up, so it's going to be really difficult for you to touch them or see them in order to shoot them. I have a Thunderfire cannon in the back for the reducing movement or just, help clearing chaff. And then I have 3 units of 5 intercessors with the auxiliary grenade launchers.
Mm-hmm.
So they also have 30-inch range on the grenade launchers. And then I have 2 chaplains with jump packs for Catechism of Fire and Canticle of Hate. Canticle of Hate is the +2 to charge, and then the additional 3 inches for Consolidate and Pile In for units within 6 inches. Catechism of Fire, I think, is you have to select a unit for the +1 to wound.
You do.
But those are okay. I like litanies, but they're kind of swingy.
Yeah, I was actually thinking for a little bit about taking a chaplain dread.
Yeah.
In my Iron Hands army, to get litany, and actually for what you're talking about, making sure that the Iron Stone was on something durable.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh well, that's tough to 7, 9 wounds.
Yeah.
Kind of durable. But. It's still 160 something points, and
the scary part about the Raven Guard tactical doctrine is that it doesn't have to be on any certain weapon. It's just everything in your army. I think other than vehicles, I don't know. I'd have to take a look at it again, but I'm pretty sure it's everything in your army gets the +1 to hit and wound. So it's not specific.
Well, against characters anyway, which a lot of people were kind of talking crap about when that first dropped, because I think when compared like right up next to Iron Hands, people were kind of thinking that Raven Guard was not on the same level. But I think people forget, most knights. First of all, most knights are characters.
Yeah.
Tank commanders are a thing.
Yeah.
As somebody who runs their tank commanders and loves them.
Tank commanders.
There's a lot of we're basically. Some armies are basically just hero hammer.
Exactly. So like those Centurions, they'll get the +1 to hit and +1 to wound. So they'll hit knights on 2s. They'll wound knights on 2s.
With neg 4 AP, 3 damage. You'll just melt a knight.
25 attacks. I was doing the math. I think I was doing like 43 plus damage to
that's
one round of combat with
ridiculous.
a unit of 6. It is hilarious.
Yeah.
I absolutely love those units. They're just filthy. So, a lot of people I see are taking just the normal Raven Guard chapter tactics, and they're not looking into successors. Because for my army,
because you're taking one of the successor chapters, right?
Yeah. So I'm just doing the successor chapter tactics. So I'm going with stealthy, which is part of the normal Raven Guard tactic. It's the anything beyond 12 inches of your enemy is they get the benefit of cover.
Right.
So I get that part, but I didn't think I needed the -1 to hit in terrain features.
Right.
I think I needed the +3 inches on ranged weapons more, so I took that. So my flamers on Centurions will be 11 inches.
Which is like that. I think I don't think people really understand how good that's going to be.
Because I mean, they drop in 9 inches away, they're still able to flame you.
Right.
The plasma guns on the veterans are going to be 15 inches. So I can effectively deep strike them in, avoid your Auspex scan, and still pop something potentially, which is really good. You got to kind of think about those things, and that's something that I like about my own personal growth is I'm starting to think more along the lines of what can this unit do against this style or this strategy.
Right, and you're kind of still finding your own play style, but you know what you want to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. I mean, yeah, I went pure Iron Hands, but I mean part of that is really they technically have 3 benefits.
Yeah.
So that's something.
That's rough.
But I mean, I honestly once I actually got on the Iron Hands train and I started looking into the lore, I was like, even if I go with a successor chapter in air quotes, it's still gonna be Iron Hands. I don't want to do something dumb, but I think that you're definitely on the right track there. Because I mean, the one thing I'm not necessarily a fan of with the Raven Guard chapter tactic is the -1 to hit is situational, especially you have some tournaments where terrain is like non-existent, basically. Like I've been to some tournaments where my first round of terrain was like really heavy, and by the time I got to like my fourth or fifth round, I was on a different side of the event.
For sure.
It'd be a desert, and there's like nothing really for you to get like -1 to hit. So I think that it might be smarter as a Raven Guard player to actually go, okay, well, I'm still playing Raven Guard, but they're not like they're something else also.
Exactly, and that's why I like Stealthy as a successor tactic, because it still gives you that ability. And one thing that I think Raven Guard players should take advantage of is what I don't see anyone doing is camo cloaks. So Phobos units and sniper scouts or scouts with camo cloaks. Period. They're so good because if you are in cover, you get +2 to your save rather than +1. So, you know, your Eliminators are getting a
1-up save.
1-up save. Scout snipers are getting a 2-up.
Yeah,
and it's just so good because they don't even have to technically be on a terrain feature.
Your Marines are not really dying like Marines, which is, I think, probably one of the better things about that specific Raven Guard chapter tactic, because you look at Marines, especially in the lore, and you're like, how are these things so powerful in the lore? And then like on the tabletop, they've never really found a way to make them unkillable. I mean, I like Iron Hands troops for like the same reason, almost. Just because you know, I don't get the +1 to save, but you know, if they're next to the Iron Father, they get a 5-up invul save. They get a 6-up Feel No Pain, possibly a 5-up Feel No Pain with a stratagem. So, especially with those two chapter tactics, I think you're looking at really durable Marine bodies.
Yeah. So it's a really good combination, and you know I've even sent my lists or versions of it to people from like TFG Radio who are also playing into Raven Guard, and they gave me some advice too, and they also said that, you know, they said that I was really trying to play well to the strengths of the list, and and that made me feel good. So moving on with the list building. So I have 2 chaplains with jump packs. I think it's really important to get as much mobility as possible.
Definitely.
To move around and get with those units that might deep strike. So 2 chaplains with the litanies, and then I have a normal librarian, and he's going to have Null Zone, obviously, because Null Zone is way fucking better now. Because it's 4 units and not models. So it's an aura death hex. So you just get him in there and you start bad touching anything with that
oh yeah, you don't want to be in the vicinity of that.
So he's also going to have Veil of Time. He's going to have Veil of Time for those Centurions that really want to get that charge off.
Oh yeah, definitely. So, well, I mean, they're going to be looking for a 7-inch charge anyway out of Deep Strike. So, or do you have that on one of your chaplains, the +2 charge?
Yeah, +2. Yeah. So that's the canonical. Yeah. So it'd be the 7-inch charge and rerollable, and the Warlord is going to have a rerollable,
right?
With Raven's Fury, because I'm a successor, you have to pay a CP to give him that,
right?
But that's the only thing you really lose. So you give him the rerollable, and then you give him the trait to avoid Overwatch, which is even better. So you get
it's really dumb in Iron Hands because we like our Overwatch on 4s. I don't know what the problem with that is.
Now here's a key player in my list that I really like, and it's the Phobos Librarian. Yeah. And here's why: I give him 2 powers. I give him Shadow Step, which is basically to jump for any Raven Guard character.
Yeah.
And then I also give him Enveloping Darkness. Now, Enveloping Darkness is really good. It's a Warp Charge 7, and it's any enemy unit within 18 inches. You cast that, and it makes that unit -1 to hit when it targets anything from your army, and it can't fire Overwatch.
Yeah, that's really good.
It's really good for Warp Charge 7.
Yeah.
So, you Shadow Step. If your Phobos isn't within 18 inches, which isn't hard to do, then you just Shadow Step him. Or if a chaplain isn't in range, you just Shadow Step them because the litanies don't go away. Right. Or the captain who can, if I make him a chapter master, rerolling everything or just ones, you can Shadow Step him in to range of those Centurions. Or the Null Zone, you could Shadow Step him in.
So yeah, you're really embracing the shadows with your list.
Exactly.
And I think that's really good. Not only is it thematic, but it is going to be really tough to deal with because you're going to be kind of blinking guys all over the field.
Exactly.
And you've always enjoyed board control. Sometimes I don't let you actually have board control, but I know you like it.
Yeah. So there's one. Shadow Step is such a flexible tool because maybe your captain's just not really providing the benefits that are needed at the moment, but he can still help you in some other way. These missions in Michigan GT are also Maelstrom, which means you're going to have a lot of secure objectives, defend objectives. Right. So maybe I decide to just shadow step a character that I'm not using, like the captain, onto an objective that I have drawn. So like secure objective 5, shadow step him over there. I secured objective 5. Guess what? That objective is miles away from everyone.
Right. Now, the ability to teleport, especially late game, I think is really undervalued because that happens all the time, and that's what I used to do with my Grey Knights too. It'd be like turn 5, and I would gateway to infinity across the board on something that nobody is anywhere near to. Exactly. So I think that's really powerful. I do want to say a few things about my list. I'm not actually going to Michigan GT because my wife and I had baby too tall not too long ago. So it'll be a couple months probably. But I am keeping up with things, and so I did cringe, go for Iron Hands. However, I've always been kind of a AdMech, Iron Hands guard kind of guy. I really like my vehicles. And when someone told me that my repulsors have 5 invulnerable saves and I take -1 damage, I'll jump on that. So my list, I want to say is kind of standard for a lot of what I've been seeing online. As far as the core is obviously Iron Father and 3 Repulsor Executioners. A lot of people are going 2 Repulsor Executioners and a Leviathan. Yeah. I think Leviathan, while is pretty much unkillable, has a couple drawbacks that I don't particularly like. One of which is it can get tied up in combat. Another is the range, 24 inches, and pretty much everything else that a repulsor has anyway that will do anything is longer than that. Yeah,
it doesn't really fit well mobility wise with the way Iron Hands is supposed to go, in my opinion.
No, so I that and Thunderfire cannons are everywhere, and I was talking about this with somebody the other day, and I'm like, well, if you can Thunderfire a Leviathan and just stay outside of 24 inches the entire game.
Sure can.
So yes, it's unkillable pretty much if they want to spend the CPs to make it that way, but you can avoid it, especially as a Space Marine player.
Sure.
So I went triple Repulsor Executioner, and I also you told me Reese said it was a dumb idea to put Ironstone on a lieutenant. I have Ironstone on a lieutenant. It is a Primaris lieutenant though, and here's the thing. So I have 2 squads of 5 intercessors, and I have a Primaris Librarian and a Primaris Lieutenant. Then the idea is that they're going to be in the Repulsor's first turn if I'm against something that is going to be able to snipe them. The theory being that if something's super heavy on snipers, like your army, it's not going to kill a Repulsor turn 1 even without the Ironstone. So really the only character I have out and about is going to be the Iron Father, and he can kind of take care of himself, really. And I have a unit of scouts. After that, I think I get a little wonkier than most people. I have two whirlwinds with the Castellan whirlwind launchers, which is basically 2d6, strength 6, 0 AP, well, 1 AP because it's Devastator Doctrine, and a Thunderfire cannon, and then I have 3 Landspeeders with assault cannons and heavy bolters. And I have not tested them yet, but I think that the Landspeeders for Iron Hands is going to be something that's kind of sneaky, kind of like sneaky good.
Yeah.
Because they, for 70 points, you get 9 quality shots. I hope that they perform as I expect. And actually, that's why I'm bringing the Whirlwinds, too, because a lot of people think the Whirlwinds are really bad. And to a degree, I have to agree that whirlwinds are kind of bad. The way I'm looking at the whirlwinds in context with the list, though, is you're getting for 50 points more than a wyvern, which you see all over regardless. You're getting an extra 11 wounds. You're getting the same amount of shots. They're higher strength. You actually have AP with the shots because you're never getting out of Devastator Doctrine. And you have a better ballistic skill. So that's just kind of how I'm looking at it, because I think like Iron Hands, a lot of the Iron Hand lists I've been seeing are Dreadnoughts with Repulsors and some troops. Yeah. And those lists are going to dominate like middle tables. But especially in ITC missions, or even in things like Michigan GT, you need artillery that is going to go out and touch your opponent, especially if it's someone like you who's trying to be sneaky and like hide out of line of sight. Because I mean, I don't think anyone really wants to be on the receiving end of 3 Repulsor Executioners.
Nope.
Like, I played against an all vehicle list last week, and we had, I think I put a bunch of like heavy bolters into a vehicle and it just died because they're all -2 AP now. So, I mean, yeah, like Space Marines will just melt things that they couldn't melt before because you're getting that extra AP, and that extra AP might not matter to you, but considering, you know, you're forcing 5-up saves on anything, really.
Which, I mean, unless you're Nurgle, it doesn't really matter. Because we all know about them 5-ups I love to make with Plague Bearers.
yeah, that's... Whew. Well, originally you were going to bring a whole bunch of those, I think.
Yeah, I was, and it's just... They're dying to stiff breezes now because, you know, you've got those Leviathans, you've got those Butcher Cannons and the Storm Cannon arrays, and all those 2 damage, you know, Gatling Knights now. If I'm up against a Gatling Knight for Chaos, then they ignore hit modifiers with 24 Gatling.
Well, yeah, I think I don't want to say unfortunately, because I mean Plague Bearers are tough to deal with. Yeah, but I think most armies have things in their arsenal to deal with Plague Bearers or Plague Bearer-like units.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, Iron Hands, for example, they have Repulsors, they have the Leviathans you were talking about. You know, Eldars don't even really interact with them now because most Eldar lists are mainly flyer spam now. So there's like no interaction at all there. Yeah. Guard has just 1 billion shots. And most Space Marines are bringing, like, Ultramarines are just going to bring aggressors, and it's just going to be a bad day for you if you're bringing Plague Bearers. But I still think Chaos is going to be a strong performer. I just think it's going to be mainly demons, or it's going to be something like I was telling you about, like Justin Curtis and his list, where you're just going to throw... You know, your list is only going to be like 6 or 7 units. Yeah. But all 6 or 7 units are going to be just threat overload. Like, you have to deal with all of them, but you can't deal with all of them in a single, you know, round. So
just stuff that'll go over to your fucking side of the board and spank you all day.
Yeah.
One thing I did want to talk about with my list that we didn't touch on is failure point. And this list, it requires a lot of finesse and skill, and that's why I'm also playing it. Not because I'm very skilled or I know a lot about finesse, it's because I want to grow more with it.
Right, and you'll learn a lot.
Exactly. So the failure point is a lot higher with this kind of list, and it's not very forgiving because a lot of the units matter. Right. Especially the Centurions. They are there to make sure everything else is not shot at.
Not to say that anyone's going to deal with them very well,
but they're there. They're the hammer. Yeah, and everything else is the anvil, in my opinion. They're the hammer.
I would definitely agree. I think with almost any Raven Guard like list or anything that is going to be like what you're playing, there's a lot of finesse involved, and it's a high skill floor, but also a much higher skill ceiling. Yeah. So you could go really far with something like that, and I think that's why like Raven Guard and like White Scars aren't seeing like a lot of people like jump on the bandwagon because I think it's just a higher point of entry.
Yeah.
Whereas Iron Hands, I think they're gonna dominate the mid boards because people won't know how to deal with them, and almost anyone can just go out and pick up some of the vehicles that they need for Iron Hands. But I think there's a really low floor for entry for Iron Hands.
Yeah.
But I do think if you're good, there's a lot you can do with them. So I think all Marines now feel much different when they play, which I really like. I can't wait to see what like Blood Angels and Dark Angels get and stuff like that.
Those kind of. Hopefully they do something with Space Wolves because
oh my goodness.
but yeah, going back to the Raven Guard point, there's a lot of what ifs in that list, and it's definitely not the last iteration for me. I already have a couple of ideas for future lists with the Raven Guard, but the whole principle I think is the same. But I think it's important to understand that whatever level player you are, your list is going to have weaknesses and it's going to have strengths, and you have to be able to think on the fly when those weaknesses come up. You know, what happens if I fail Shadow Step?
Right.
What happens if I fail that charge? What happens if I don't get to where I need to go? What happens if somebody screens me out really well, or somebody deploys 10 scouts in no man's land to block me out as much as they can?
Right.
These kind of things, you have to be able to ask yourself these things. So you have to ignore your ego if you want to grow too.
Yeah, I think that's hard. I know I usually am constantly tinkering around with lists. I doubt this is my last iteration of like an Iron Hands list. I do think it's solid, but I mean, the army that I took earlier this year through 3 or 4 GTs, it was never the exact same army at any of those GTs, and that's because you play 5 rounds and you're like, there's something I can improve on, and I think that you do have to love your army to an extent, but I think you also have to realize that no list is ever going to be perfect. And that you have to kind of mold it a little bit all the time. I mean, even the top players, even Jim Vessel, every month or so changes 100 to 200 points of his chaos list. So I think everyone needs to be able to do that, at least to an extent.
Especially when you're up there and people are just watching you like a hawk. Like, I don't get it. It's like, I'd be terrified of everyone just, like, looking at my list 24/7, and then I'm just, like, constantly being judged. And now I have to change this because all these people are going to build against me. Like,
yeah, I think you always need to... I think thinking outside the box will help a lot, too. I think there was some advice that I had heard that if you start off building something close to a net list, but you play it and you find out what works for you more, and then you start adjusting it from there, and maybe including something like a Whirlwind or a Landspeeder or something kind of like way out there that no one really takes.
Yeah.
And you kind of start making it your own. I think that will do more for you than just 100% net listing something, because you'll have better experience with those other units, and you'll catch people off guard. I mean, I remember rolling up to tables, and people weren't taking my Grandmaster seriously until they killed like 3 things turn 1, and then they're like, oh well, I wasn't screening or whatever. So
yeah, and that can definitely happen. I think the most important thing that everyone should keep in mind is that no 2 players are alike. So if you don't ever want a net list and you just want to be that pioneer list builder who wants to look into the books and build something that they think can work really well for them, and they can actually make those work and go to top tables and perform very, very well, I think you should be all for that. And I think if you are more comfortable starting with the net list and then developing off of that. Just go for it. But however you want to build a list, I think it's just however you should. And anyone who tells you otherwise, they should just go fuck themselves.
I need to find a bleep button for you. You need
my bad.
YouTube monetization. No, that's okay. No, I get what you're saying. I think if you want to take pure Grey Knights to a GT and win, I mean, there have been a couple people, especially recently, who've actually done that. So nothing is impossible, which I think is what makes 8th edition so great. I think if I was trying to get into this game in 7th edition, I just wouldn't have. Like, all the stories of the Riptide Wings and just miscellaneous things that just weren't any fun. And you always saw those top, 2 or 3 lists
Death Stars.
When every single tournament, like, there was no variation. And to have, every week we get reports of, Orcs won a GT, Eldar Flyers won a GT, Chaos won a GT, Space Marines won a GT. Like,
this meta is so diverse, and the books and the rules are in such a good place. It does really make me happy because it's not just one army that's winning and dominating everything. Castellan, it's just.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the game grows, and with it, the people grow. And
I mean, there's always going to be a problem unit, and they do generally balance it pretty well.
Yeah.
Like the Castellan, maybe we'll see a comeback because statistically you can kind of kill a Repulsor.
No,
I said kind of. If it's an Imperial Castellan with the relic and they spend the stratagem points, they can kill one. But that's the thing is, like, I think I do think you have to. I think we were talking about this earlier. There's a point where you let the meta settle around new things, and when things need to be fixed. Like, I think the Leviathan Dreadnought, as it sits, I think that needs a hard look. I think other than that, Iron Hands might be okay because Raven Guard have a decent chance of just beating it. White Scars, I mean,
Definitely.
if you get to turn 3 with White Scars against Iron Hands, and you just ram some stuff up there, I mean, there's not really a whole lot we can do.
Yeah.
So I think that there are definitely counters to Iron Hands. I know that it is strong, but I do think that they are going through most of the codexes.
Yeah.
And just making everything stronger. So I would be interested to just see how everything, maybe besides Leviathan, which we can all agree is stupid.
So here's my issue with all that. Is like, yeah, I agree that sometimes you just need to let the meta settle, but I can also sit there and see that I think we're at a point in time in 40K where hotfixes should be more relevant and prevalent than, waiting 6 months for effect. Because usually when you wait 6 months and something big changes, you just see the fact that happened just recently, hardly anything changed. That's a really good sign. What we need more than anything is hotfixes. When somebody decides to put out rules that are just absolutely ridiculous.
Well, I think you kind of see that with like ITC because ITC is the most common tournament format that we have, and so they basically just hotfixed the repulsors sitting on top of the buildings with the if it fits, it sits.
Well, I mean, that needs to happen because a lot of people are like, well, why didn't they do this before with Eldar Flyers or
Riptides or whatever else,
or Ravagers? Well, you still have the ability to kill those things in one turn.
Right.
You have a brick house sitting on top of a building that you can't kill in shooting, like, at all.
Yeah.
The Volcano Lance for Chaos Knight is doing 7 damage on average.
And then you heal 6 of it back up again, yeah.
But if you get into combat with a Gallant,
right,
that Thunderstrike Gauntlet touches it, then it's doing, I think, 16 to 19 damage in one turn. Right,
which will kill it. I mean, there's always going to be the unlucky roll, or I guess the lucky roll for the repulsor. But
exactly. So there's a lot of these talks online about, well, we just need to let the meta settle. It's like, we know how to deal with something like an Iron Hands repulsor. we know how to deal with it. It's melee. You have to get in there and smack it with things.
I think that people are currently they're just used to they're saying, okay, well, what do I need in my army to kill a knight? and the thing is that actually a lot of stuff that would kill a knight doesn't kill Iron Hands stuff, which is kind of weird to say. Because I mean the list I was running before this, you saw, I had like 20 plasma boys jumping out of a plane turn 1, and they nuked basically 2 full knights in 1 turn. Yeah. Well, it doesn't do that much to a repulsor because it basically halves the damage that I do.
Yeah.
And so that kind of stuff, I mean, you do have to adapt to an extent, and I think melee is kind of the answer there. Like, I think Mortarion, even Magnus, although I don't think you'll still see Magnus. I think something like that, or even Gilliman. I think Gilliman, with like the 7 or 8 attacks he gets now, going up into a repulsor is gonna smack some crap into the repulsor for sure.
Well, I mean, you've got all these ideas for really hard hitting normal units that a lot of people are taking. Like if you just get a Vanguard veteran assault squad with jump packs and thunderhammers in, and maybe like a null zone librarian, your repulsor's having a bad day.
Or Blood Angels maybe might be coming back a little bit. Death Company with they have thunderhammers, and they have like 4 attacks now because they get the targets up, and they get the +1 to wound. So I mean, there are options out there for actually a few armies,
but it's all melee.
It is all melee.
It's like, check this shooting trick out to kill Iron Hands.
I mean, unless you're there was somebody, he took one of those like 1100 point Forge World Tau models. To an event. He went 4-1 with it too. No. It was a suit.
Oh, the Taunar?
Taunar. He took Taunar. Taunar, though, that'll blow up blow up just about anything in 1 turn.
That thing is amazing.
But he did go 4-1 in a tournament with that too. So I mean, there's still hope with shooting.
Was that or Helpful Finger?
I think it was Val. The Helpful Finger. that was Val.
That list is so funny.
But I mean, like I said, I think if you're an Imperium player and you have a Castellan and you invest the CP into it like you used to, you still have a pretty good shot at just shooting a repulsor off the board.
If you go first. If not, repulsors kill that thing. There's no 3-up invul anymore.
That's true. I mean, it's a give and a take. Maybe we'll just see the double Castellan meta that we never saw.
There are some people talking about bringing double Castellans. I'm just like, that's 1,400 points, and like, I'm also bringing guard. Okay, you have enough for screen.
Yeah, it's like 600 points of guard gets you a tank commander and like 100 bodies. So
why not just bring 2 Valiants?
I do like my Valiants, but technically Chaos Knights have an answer, but it's the when they go the Infernal Household, get +1 damage on your weapons.
Ugh.
But yeah. But I think that might be it for today.
Yeah. No, it's good. I like talking about all this stuff. It's fun.
We did ramble on more about, I think, Iron Hands and Raven Guard than anything else, but they are kind of what we're playing. Yeah. So, guys, let us know what you think of this podcast, and if you want to hear more from us, this is kind of new for us, so we're going to struggle our way through for a couple weeks.
Don't make us cry.
Too much, anyway. But, this has been Captain Too Tall with Too Tall Gamings and
Jim.
All right,
Jambalaya.
Jambalaya. And you get something Iron Hands doesn't have, which is mobility.
For sure.
So I